There's a blueprint for how financial bubbles die. It's not random. It's not unpredictable. The great crashes of our time, 1929, 2008, they all followed the same predictable five-stage pattern. It's a script, a sequence of events that builds pressure until the dam inevitably breaks. And here's what should terrify you. In 2025, we are already deep into this pattern. We are living through stage 4, the stage where panic begins. The final, catastrophic drop doesn't happen overnight. It's the end of a story that started years ago. In this video, we're going to break down that five-stage blueprint. We'll look at the historical proof. And then, I'm going to show you the bone-chilling evidence that the 2025 housing market is following that exact same script toward a finale that will catch millions completely by surprise. This is the story the mainstream news will only report on afterward. It's too late. Stage 1. The anatomy of a collapse. Before we look at the history, you need to understand the blueprint. This isn't a theory. It's the life cycle of every speculative bubble, from birth to death. Every major financial crisis follows this pattern. Stage 1 is the boom. This is the beginning. It feels incredible. The economy seems strong, optimism is everywhere, and credit is cheap. In housing, this is when prices start a steady climb. It doesn't feel like a bubble. It feels like real prosperity. But underneath, the system is being flooded with debt. The seeds of collapse are sown in overconfidence. Stage 2 is the peak. This is the awareness phase. The market gets frothy. Prices aren't just climbing anymore. They're going vertical. Euphoria takes over. You hear stories about regular people getting rich, flipping houses. This is a classic sign. But while the public is rushing in, the smart money, the insiders, are quietly getting out. They see the first cracks, but the mainstream calls it a minor correction. The party is at its loudest right before closing time. Stage 3 is the unraveling. This is the moment the story shatters, usually kicked off by a sharp, specific event. A bank failure, a sudden spike in interest rates. This is the rug pull. Easy credit vanishes. Lenders get nervous. The feeling shifts from greed to anxiety, almost overnight. This isn't the full crash yet, but the descent has begun. Stage 4 is the panic. This is the capitulation phase. This is where we are now. Anxiety turns into raw fear. The problem is on the front page of every newspaper. This stage is defined by one thing: forced selling. People who can no longer afford their payments, speculators, and over-leveraged companies are forced to sell at any price. This flood of inventory makes prices plummet. It's a downward spiral. Falling prices trigger more forced selling, which pushes prices even lower. Finally, stage 5 is the bottom, the Great Reset. This is the phase of maximum despair. Bankruptcies, foreclosures, shattered dreams. It feels like the economy will never recover. And yet, this is also the stage of maximum opportunity. For the few who understood the pattern and saved their capital, this is when the greatest wealth transfer of a generation begins. Assets are available for pennies on the dollar. A new cycle is born from the ashes of the old. These 5 stages are the blueprint. Now, let's look at the past to prove the pattern. Stage 2. The Roaring Twenties and the Seeds of 1929. To understand how these crashes begin, you have to go back a century to the Roaring Twenties. This was the original Stage 1 boom. After World War I, America was booming. The economy was roaring, and for the first time, people had access to new technology like the car and the radio. There was a belief that a new era of permanent prosperity had arrived. This optimism fueled a housing boom, driven by easy credit. But the real accelerant was speculation, most famously in the stock market. The 1920s popularized a dangerous tool for the masses: buying on margin. Let me break that down because it's crucial. Buying on margin is taking out a loan to buy stocks. In the 20s, you could put down 10% and borrow 90%. With just $100, you could control $1,000 of stock. As long as prices went up, you were a genius. The problem is, it's a double-edged sword. If that $1,000 in stock dropped by just 10% to $900, your initial $100 was completely wiped out. Worse, you still owed the bank the $900 you borrowed. This created an incredibly fragile system, a house of cards built on borrowed money. The Federal Reserve saw the bubble growing but hesitated to raise interest rates, worried it would choke off the good times. By the time they acted, it was too little, too late. This was stage one in its purest form: a booming economy, easy credit, and a public drunk on the dream of getting rich quick. It felt like a golden age, but the entire thing was built on an unsustainable foundation of debt. The first stage of a collapse always looks and feels like a victory. Stage 2 and 3 in history, from peak to panic: 1929, 1987, 2008. Every great party has a moment where the music is loudest, just before the lights die. In a crash, this is the transition from stage 2, the peak, to stage 3, the unraveling. This is when the smart money leaves and the public is left holding the bag. First, back to 1929, the market peaked in the summer of that year. That was stage 2. While newspapers wrote about barbers getting rich in stocks, the seasoned financiers, the Rockefellers, the Kennedys, were quietly selling everything. They recognized the absurd valuations and dangerous debt. Then came stage 3, the unraveling. It didn't happen all at once, but the dam broke on 2 days. Black Monday, October 28th, the Dow fell almost 13%. Then came the margin calls. Brokers demanded investors pay back their loans. They couldn't, so they were forced to sell. This led to Black Tuesday, October 29th, when the market collapsed another 12% in a historic panic. That was the trigger. The stock crash set in motion the chain reaction that led to the Great Depression and caused housing prices to eventually collapse. Now, fast forward to 1987. The mid-'80s had its own stage 1 boom, but this time it was fueled by junk bonds and early computerized program trading. Stage 2, the peak, was the summer of 1987, a sense of invincibility on Wall Street. Stage 3, the unraveling, came with a speed no one had ever seen. Black Monday, October 19th, 1987. The Dow plummeted 22.61% in one session, still the largest single-day percentage loss in history. The trigger was amplified by technology. The program trading algorithms, designed to sell automatically as the market fell, created a vicious cascade. Sell orders triggered more sell orders. The machines were running the show, and they were driving the market off a cliff. Finally, the crash freshest in our memory. 2008, the stage 1 boom of the early 2000s was all about housing. The belief was, housing prices never go down. Easy credit returned, but this time it was called subprime mortgages. The warning signs were everywhere. No documentation loans, adjustable rate mortgages with teaser rates that would later explode. Wall Street bundled these ticking time bombs and sold them as safe investments. Stage 2, the peak, was 2006. Housing prices hit their final unsustainable highs. TV shows about flipping houses were prime-time entertainment. Behind the scenes, a few investors like Michael Burry were betting hundreds of millions that the house of cards would collapse. They were the smart money. Stage 3, the unraveling, was a slow-motion cascade. It started in 2007 with rising subprime defaults. The first major domino was Bear Stearns in March 2008. But the ultimate trigger, The point of no return came on September 15, 2008, when Lehman Brothers, a 158-year-old titan of Wall Street, was allowed to fail. The failure of Lehman was the event that proved no one was safe. It instantly froze the global credit markets, the plumbing of the financial system. The panic went global. From 1929's margin calls to 1987's computer crash to 2008's subprime dominoes, the pattern is the same. A peak built on euphoria and debt, followed by a sudden unraveling that exposes the system's hidden fragility. Stage 4. The panic. Now we hold the mirror up to today. We know the 5 stages. Where are we now? The evidence is overwhelming. We are firmly in Stage 4, the panic. The capitulation phase has begun. Our Stage 1, the boom, was from 2012 to 2021. After 2008, the world's central banks, led by the Fed, started the single greatest monetary experiment in history: zero interest rate policy and massive money printing. They flooded the world with trillions in cheap, artificial money. This created a boom in asset prices, stocks, crypto, and especially real estate. This went into hyperdrive in 2020. With zero interest rates and government stimulus checks, the housing market exploded. That was our roaring 20s, built not on fundamentals, but on a mountain of cheap debt. Our Stage 2, the peak, was from late 2021 to mid-2022. This was the awareness phase. Inflation, once called transitory, was becoming a serious problem. The Fed signaled the party was over. The stock market peaked in November 2021. The housing market peaked a few months later, in the summer of 2022. That was the moment of maximum euphoria, right before the hammer fell. Our Stage 3, the unraveling, began in mid-2022. The trigger was undeniable. The most aggressive interest rate hiking cycle by the Fed in over 40 years. Mortgage rates, once below 3%, skyrocketed past 7%. This was our rug pull event. Housing affordability was destroyed. The market seized up. As J.P. Morgan's 2025 outlook noted, demand is exceptionally low and the market is largely frozen. This isn't a healthy market. This is a broken market. This brings us to today and the case for Stage 4, the panic of 2025. Stage 4 is about capitulation and forced selling. The cracks from Stage 3 are starting to shatter the foundation. The signs are everywhere. First, look at delinquencies. The story was that homeowners were strong. That story is crumbling. The latest data shows mortgage delinquencies are increasing. The most alarming signal is FHA loans, used by first-time and lower-income buyers. The FHA delinquency rate is spiking, climbing towards double digits. As the Mortgage Bankers Association noted, a softer labor market and rising costs are causing this stress. These are the homeowners with the thinnest cushion. They are the first to go over the edge. This is the beginning of forced selling. Second, the labor market is cracking. The strong jobs market was the final pillar holding everything up. That pillar now has fractures. While overall job losses aren't at crisis levels yet, layoffs are accelerating in major sectors: tech, retail, manufacturing. The unemployment rate has been steadily ticking up, reaching 4.3% in August 2025. People who bought homes at the peak in 2022 are now facing layoffs. Without a job, you can't pay a mortgage. This will be a primary driver of forced selling. Third, the commercial real estate time bomb. This is what could trigger the wider panic. A record wall of maturities is hitting in 2025, with nearly $1 trillion in commercial real estate loans coming due. These loans were made when rates were near zero. Now they have to be refinanced at much higher rates, with property values, especially for offices, plummeting. A huge percentage of these loans are held by the most vulnerable part of our financial system, regional banks. This will lead to a wave of defaults, which will crush the balance sheets of these banks, causing them to stop lending. This is a direct echo of 2008, a crisis in one part of the real estate market that infects the entire banking system. All these factors, rising delinquencies, a weakening job market, and the commercial real estate time bomb, are the ingredients for the panic phase. We're already seeing the early signs. In pandemic boomtowns like Austin, Texas, inventory has exploded to levels far above pre-pandemic norms. Psychology is shifting. The belief in a soft landing is fading. The downward spiral of forced selling, falling prices, and economic panic is no longer a prediction. It's the reality of 2025, Stage 5. The bottom and the Great Reset. After the storm of Stage 4 comes the calm of Stage 5, the bottom. This is the final act. Maximum pain, maximum pessimism, and for those who are prepared, maximum opportunity. After the 1929 crash, the bottom for the housing market wasn't reached until 1933. From their peak, national housing prices fell by over 30%, and in the hardest-hit cities, it was a wipeout, some falling over 60%. Now think about the aftermath of 2008. The panic was in 2008 and 2009, but the true bottom for the housing market didn't arrive until 2012. The news was relentlessly negative. Millions of foreclosures. It seemed like prices would never recover. But this was the moment. This was Stage 5. While the average person was terrified of real estate, giant institutional investors like Blackstone started buying up tens of thousands of homes out of foreclosure for pennies on the dollar. They saw what others didn't, that in the depths of despair, the greatest assets were on sale. They bought when there was blood in the streets. So, what will Stage 5 look like for us, likely arriving sometime in 2026 or 2027? It will be a time when the Stage 4 panic has exhausted itself. The wave of layoffs will have crested, leading to a significant increase in foreclosures. Housing prices will find their floor. While current forecasts are for modest declines, these don't account for full-blown Stage 4 panic. If the historical pattern holds, a fall of 30% or 40% in the most overvalued markets is not out of the question. The headlines will be dire. They will talk about a lost decade for homeowners. It will feel like the American dream is dead. And that is the signal. That is the Great Reset. It's the point where wealth is transferred from the unprepared to the prepared on a massive scale. For the person who understood this 5-stage pattern, who resisted the hype of Stage 2, and who built up cash, Stage 5 is the opportunity of a lifetime. It will be a time when you can buy assets for a fraction of their peak price. This isn't about profiting from misery. It's about understanding that winter is always followed by spring. The purpose of this video is to give you the historical map that allows you to navigate the storm. While others are panicking, you can be calmly preparing. You will know that Stage 5 isn't the end, it's the beginning. So there you have it, the 5-stage pattern of collapse. Stage 1, the boom. Stage 2, the peak. Stage 3, the unraveling. Stage 4, the panic. And Stage 5, the bottom. History doesn't just rhyme, it repeats. The script is almost always the same. And the evidence today, from rising delinquencies and layoffs to the time bomb in commercial real estate, all points to one conclusion. In 2025, we are living through the chaos of Stage 4. The mainstream narrative is just starting to catch up. But you're now ahead of the curve. You have the blueprint. You know what comes next. What signs are you seeing in your own neighborhood that tell you Stage 4 is here? More for sale signs? Price cuts? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to get insights that keep you ahead of the mainstream, subscribe. Knowledge is your best defense.